Welcome to Gata Press. Today we're discussing how the US is creeping into the South Caucasus and Central Asia to contain Russia. The end of the 44-day Nagorno-Karabakh War in 2020, followed by Azerbaijan's conquest of the region in 2020, did not simply redraw territorial lines, but it fundamentally altered the geopolitical architecture of a vast stretch of Eurasia. While the conflict was ostensibly a local affair between Armenia and Azerbaijan, with plenty of Turkish help, its resolution, coupled with the Russian defensive war against the US in Ukraine, have weakened Moscow's traditional grip on its southern periphery. The White House has invested significant political capital in this endeavor, with Vice President J.D. Vance being dispatched in early 2026 to the region to solidify a deal brokered by President Trump in August 2025. The shifting landscape opened a strategic window for Washington, which has responded with a multifaceted campaign across the South Caucasus and Central Asia, employing diplomatic engagement, security cooperation, and economic statecraft to assert its influence and challenge the dominance of both Russia and China. This has been accomplished mainly through the US-led Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity, a planned 42 to 43-kilometer transport corridor that would enable linking Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Kazakhstan, replacing a Russia-monitored corridor that had been negotiated after the Karabakh War, with the US-led Trip Corridor. Under the original Russian-brokered ceasefire agreements that ended the 2020 war, Moscow had secured a deal granting Russian border troops and FSB personnel a permanent presence along this corridor that was later curtailed. The Trump 2.0 administration identified the Zengezur corridor as a linchpin of Russian resurgence in the region and moved with extraordinary speed to overturn the existing arrangement. Through a combination of high-level pressure, economic incentives, and security guarantees, U.S. diplomats convinced both Armenia and Azerbaijan to abandon the Russian-led deal. In its place, Washington proposed and secured agreement for TRIP with the new terms explicitly excluding any Russian military or border personnel. Instead, the corridor would be monitored by a multinational consortium with NATO member oversight, including Turkish and U.S. technical advisors. By August 2025, the last Russian troops withdrew from their forward positions along the Zengezur route, relocating to a diminished presence in Armenia's far north. What had been a Russian military corridor was transformed almost overnight into a de facto NATO-controlled artery, linking the Caspian Sea to the Turkish border without a single Russian checkpoint. This achievement stands as the single most significant rollback of Russian influence in the post-Soviet space since the end of the Cold War. TRIP is not merely a peace initiative or a commercial venture, but a strategic artery intended to expand trade routes from Central Asia to Europe while implanting a U.S. and NATO-managed transit passage in one of Eurasia's most contested corridors. The removal of Russian troops from the Zengezur route sent shockwaves through the Kremlin, which publicly decried the move as a betrayal by Armenia and a blatant U.S. power grab. Yet without the military or economic leverage to reverse the decision, Moscow could only watch as its hard-won corridor was repurposed into an instrument of Western influence. The most dramatic evidence of this renewed U.S. focus can be observed in the South Caucasus, where the U.S. has orchestrated a remarkable realignment of regional alliances. Armenia, once a steadfast Russian ally within the Collective Security Treaty Organization, has experienced a profound and public disillusionment with Moscow. The perception that Russian peacekeepers failed to protect ethnic Armenians during the 2023 Azerbaijani offensive led Yerevan to freeze its participation in the CSTO and declare its reliance on Russia a strategic mistake. Seizing this opening, the United States moved quickly to formalize a new partnership. In January 2025, Armenia and the U.S. signed a Charter on Strategic Partnership, a framework through which Washington has agreed to assist with border security, enhance military interoperability, and expand defense consultations. This has been reinforced by practical military cooperation, including the joint Eagle Partner military exercises held in Armenia in both 2023 and 2025, which saw hundreds of U.S. and Armenian servicemen trained together for international peacekeeping missions. Taken together, these moves have led some observers to conclude that the Trump administration succeeded in penetrating the South Caucasus more deeply than any previous U.S. administration, exploiting the weakening of both Russian and Iranian influence in order to establish a long-term strategic presence anchored by a NATO-controlled transit corridor. Concurrently, the United States has launched a parallel and equally significant strategic push into Central Asia, with the primary vehicle for this engagement being the C5+1 dialogue platform, which was elevated to the level of a presidential summit in 2023. This led to the November 2025 meeting at the White House, where President Trump hosted the leaders of all 5 Central Asian republics, the first time a U.S. president had done so. At its core, Washington is seeking to secure access to the region's vast deposits of critical minerals, such as uranium and rare earths, which are essential for advanced technologies and green energy, and the region holds at least 25 of the 54 minerals the U.S. government considers critical. The economic numbers attached to this new push are substantial. During the 2025 summit, Uzbekistan pledged to attract $35 billion in U.S. investments over 3 years, while Kazakhstan signed $17 billion in bilateral agreements. This economic engagement is complemented with military cooperation, as Uzbekistan approved an agreement to protect classified military information with the Pentagon, a key step toward deeper security ties. Moreover, Kazakhstan's growing alignment with the West saw it approving a $1 billion Aspen National Project, which involves building 4 new factories to produce artillery ammunition to NATO specifications. The first of these facilities, Aspen 1, is already under construction and slated to begin serial production in 2027, a move that has drawn sharp criticism from Russian officials who label it an unfriendly step away from Moscow's military-industrial orbit. Meanwhile, the Montana National Guard, under the State Partnership Program, has continued its decades-long cooperation with Kyrgyzstan, conducting joint exercises like AK Shumker 2025 to enhance interoperability on border security. This twin-pronged advance into the South Caucasus and Central Asia represents a calculated U.S. response to a shifting global order. This strategic realignment has now acquired sufficient institutional and economic momentum that it will certainly endure across successive U.S. administrations, regardless of which party holds the White House.